Joining us remotely, Director Hilton.
Here.
And Director Walia. Director Walia, can you hear us?
Here.
Thank you so much. We do have a quorum up aboard.
Great, thank you. And thank you everybody for making the effort to meet our quorum so we could do our important business. Let's go ahead with public comment on matters not listed on the agenda. Do we have any public in the room that wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda? Not seeing one. Do we have any online?
None online, Chair.
Very good. We'll move ahead and we'll move on to consent calendar. And so let me see first if we have any items that directors wish to pull or comment on. I do not see any here. Do we have any hands raised online for director? Okay, no wish to do that. Let's see if we have any public comment on items on the consent agenda. I do not see any in the room nor online. Very good. In that case, I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar as a whole.
Second.
Let's proceed with the vote.
Thank you. Director Scozola.
Aye.
Meadows.
Aye.
Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein.
Aye.
Director Showalter. Alternate Director Abakoga.
Aye.
Director Hilton.
Aye.
Director Walia. Director Walia, can you hear us?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That motion
Aye.
carries.
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so that was a number of important items that we've discussed in some cases in the past, and so I'm glad that we proceeded with that. Let's move on to the regular calendar and item number 2 with the CEO report.
Good evening, Chair Tyson and directors. CEO report today. First, I want to introduce a couple of new staff members, starting with Alicia Hagan, who is on the flexibility manager, and she Justin Savina's team working on virtual power plants and demand flexibility. So she'll introduce herself.
Oh. No. Okay. Hello, board directors. My name is Alicia Pagan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm joining the energy services team as a demand flexibility manager. This is my 4th week, so pretty new, but really excited to be here. Prior to SVCE, I worked at a company called LEAP that does demand response programming and different grid services. And prior to that, I've worked in city government and nonprofits doing clean energy and climate work as well. I grew up in Northern California in a small town called Ukiah, and currently live in Oakland, where I like to do pottery, dancing, and cooking with friends. Yeah, nice to meet you all.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is Nicholas Barat. He's a senior energy services specialist, also in Justin Savina's team. He'll be working account services team, and he's here as well.
Good evening, Board of Directors. My name is Nicholas Bale. I'm the new Energy Services Specialist on the Energy Services team, working in Justin Savina's department. I've worked in customer success for the past 5 years, last 3 of which were at Calpine Community Energy, working with multiple CCAs, including Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Grew up, born and raised in Silicon Valley, and I'm excited to work with all of you.
Welcome to both of you, and great to hear about your backgrounds too. Thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to invite Brian Chin, Director of Government Legislative Affairs, to give some federal impacting SVCE and others.
Good evening, Board. Benna Chang, Director of Government and Legislative Affairs. As Monica mentioned, I'm here under the CEO report tonight to give a quick federal update, but I will be giving a fuller state update on the regular agenda later tonight. So as everyone is aware, on October 1st, the federal government shut down after Congress was unable to come to an agreement on the budget. As a reminder, SVCE is not funded by federal grants, so our direct impact from the shutdown is limited. However, staff are monitoring indirect impacts, including renewable and transmission projects that are in the federal permitting process. Separately, on October 1st, you might have seen that the U.S. Department of Energy also announced cutting close to $8 billion in grant programs from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We are waiting to hear formal details about these grant rescissions, but understand that there may be California projects on the list, including a transmission grant for the California Energy Commission and the Arches Hydrogen Hub. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Great. Do we have any questions? I don't see any here or any hands raised. All right. Well, thank you for that update, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in a few minutes.
Okay, happy to answer any questions should you have any from the actual report itself.
I'm not seeing any. Do we have any public comment on the CEO's report? I do not see any in the room or online. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item number 3, the Clean Pathways Program.
All right, good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, good evening, directors. My name is Zach Liskey, Deputy Director of Power Resources. Appreciate the opportunity to present this item to you. And if we go ahead and go to the next slide. There's a few topics to cover. First, an update on our clean progress. This is an expanded look at what we provide in the monthly CEO report. And then next is a discussion on the challenges SVC faces in power procurement. And the last item will be on to follow up on something we brought to the board last year. All right, we can go to the next slide. All right, starting off with a discussion on clean power procurement.
If you could
Next
slow
slide.
down a sec. Oh, there we go. Never mind. We're back. Go ahead.
All right, okay, great. We can go to the next slide. Perfect. All right, to recap, last November, the board adopted new long-term clean targets. Those are summarized here. I want to make just an important note on the definition of terms that are listed. So when we say clean, we're talking about carbon-free, which includes things like large hydroelectric, nuclear, and also renewable resources like wind, solar, geothermal. And renewable would just be a subset of what is carbon-free and clean. So the keys here are that we're maintaining being 100% clean through 2030, which is a long-running goal of SVCE. And then starting in 2030, 75% renewable. And then in 2035, 100% renewable on an annual basis. Go to the next slide, please. All right, and the focus this presentation tonight is on the 3 key pillars of our mission, being clean, reliable, and affordable. It's about balancing these 3 things allows us to implement a lot of the impactful work that we're doing in the community. So it's very important that we have a handle on the intersection of these 3 things. Next slide, please. So look at our goals, many of which are driven by the state regulators. SB 100, SB 350, those establish renewable energy targets. And importantly, the board, you're able to set ambitious targets that are above and beyond the state's requirements. Next slide, please. SVC has made tremendous progress in long-term power procurement. We have nearly $4 billion in commitments on long-term contracts. We've signed 24 agreements, nearly 1 gigawatt of renewable generating capacity, over 1,600 megawatt hours of battery storage. 10 of those projects are now online. Go to the next slide. This is looking at that in a chart going in the long range out through 2045. The key to take away here is really looking at that middle dashed line. That's the RPS target that these resources, everything shown here is a renewable resource. that helps us meet that middle dashed line, which eventually in 2035 jumps up to be in line with our load projections. All right, next slide. And then on a short-term look through 2030, we are looking really good at meeting those targets, especially in those first few years. And then in the later part of this decade, we have a little more work to do, but everything's looking pretty good. Next slide. All right, now changing gears and focusing on some of the challenges that we've been facing, we continue to face, and making progress on our power procurement. Next slide. So headwinds come from many fronts. Achieving success, building a clean, reliable, affordable portfolio faces various challenges. State regulators, the market, all levels of government, the California Independent System Operator. We'll take a look at each of these in the subsequent slides. Next slide. Since 2019, wind and solar prices have been on the rise. This is a sampling of solicitations we've done since the past several years. And as you can see, 2019 solar projects were hovering around, say, $20 per megawatt hour. They're now approaching $60. And that may not be the ceiling. They could go even higher with changes to the tax incentives that support these projects and the earlier sunset dates. Go to the next slide. We have a big portfolio of solar. We have over 700 megawatts that we've either planned or contracted for already. And when we do solicitations, we do look for a diverse set of technologies. However, the only technology that in California is consistently being built is solar, and especially solar paired with storage. So this can lead to, say, suboptimal portfolio diversification and value, along with potentially suboptimal results for grid reliability and optimization. So if we go to the next slide, having so much solar in our portfolio is it's in line with the state and how much solar is generating. A typical day, spring day in California, there could be over 20 gigawatts, 20,000 megawatts of solar generated in the middle of the day. And all of that solar, there are times where there is no place for it to go and it must be curtailed. And so springtime in California has created a dynamic where it's sunny, temperatures are mild, there's snow starting to melt, and there's no place for solar to go, so it has to be turned off. When solar is turned off, the portfolio value it provides diminishes. And this chart looks at the last 10 years, and it's been growing very rapidly. And this trend may continue in the future, but there are some promising developments. As you know, the state has cleared the way for California to enter into regionalization of electricity markets. And with that, you broaden the footprint of what the grid operators are optimizing in their markets. And when you do that, potentially have a better dispatch of all of the resources on the system, higher portfolio value, and hopefully lower rates for customers. That is results to be determined. We shall see how that plays out. It'll be many years to come. Next slide. All right, switching gears a little bit, looking at development. The market and development timelines have proven very challenging to navigate. Many of SVCE's projects have been subject to development delays, as can be seen here. Macroeconomic and geopolitical uncertainty does not bode well for timely development. Those delays, they can force us into short-term markets to fill gaps, which can be costly, and it does challenge the balance of clean, reliable, affordable. All right, next slide. This is the California Independent System Operator. They have a process to connect new resources to the grid. It's called the interconnection queue, which is the line, so to speak. The ISO, they look at groups of resources in clusters. They determine what's going to be the impact of adding those new resources on the transmission system? Is there any new infrastructure that needs to be built to support them? And the two most recent clusters, clusters 14 and 15, number of projects trying to get on the grid has grown tremendously. It's created a bottleneck, and it has led to some queue reform efforts to try to alleviate those delays, and more work does need to be done here. Next slide. All right. So the state regulators, primarily the CPUC, they can introduce a lot of uncertainty on the rule book. What will it look like in the future? What do we need to comply with? The latest proposal is a framework called the Reliable and Clean Power Procurement Program, or the RCPPP for short. The intention here is overlay several existing CPUC programs into one framework, create efficiencies in planning and procurement. This is going through proceedings now. We are participating in shaping that process, and there's more to come. The next slide. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about load growth, which is the last challenge in this section of the report. This has become quite the mainstream topic as data centers are popping up. They may be popping up all over the place. It's hard to tell where they'll be and when they will be. And so not knowing what that demand is going to look like makes planning a very difficult task. So this chart shows a spread of scenarios, the middle line being what we're expecting, what we're planning for, the high line being if, say, there's mass adoption of electrification, there's lots of data center growth, and the bottom line being, well, if things don't pan out as we think, maybe it goes the other direction, things are more stagnant. In each scenario, it does pose its own set of challenges. So there's an element of we want to be just right with our forecasts. So we'll see how this evolves. All right, next slide. Okay, last section of the presentation on future reporting. Next slide. So going back to last November when we established the new clean targets, we said we would come back with plans on how to keep the board informed of our progress, both on future goals, what that 2030, 2035 milestones look like, and then on how we've done in the past. In the last year, how are things looking? Next slide. So first on future goals, right now, as a routine part of our business process, we do portfolio modeling and develop expectations of how the portfolio is going to perform in the future. And we think that this gives us some answers well ahead of time if we're going to be successful in meeting those targets. So in general, we should have a pretty good sense about, say, 12 to 18 months out from a particular year if we're going to hit those targets. And then we'll have an even better sense within the year, say around July, August, if we're hitting those expectations, or if we need to enter the short-term markets for some additional procurement, help build out certainty that we're going to meet our goals. So our proposal is annually, we provide the board, call it Clean Pathways Report on meeting our 2030 and 2035 goals. And we'll also continue reporting in the CEO report on shorter term horizons, say the next 2 to 5 years. All right, next slide. So on hourly progress, so recent legislation requires that we start reporting hourly performance to the state regulators starting in 2028. This isn't public reporting, but our plan is we can utilize what's in that reporting and summarize and share with the board how do we do in the last year on an hourly basis. The next slide. These are illustrative examples. This is the chart we saw earlier. And the idea is we will bring back versions of this with explicit callouts on how are we doing in the 2030, 2035 horizons. Next slide. Then again, illustrative. We'll share something like this that shows on average how well are we doing each hour of each month. And in addition to that, on an ad hoc basis, when we bring a new PPA to the board for review and approval, which could happen certainly at any time, we will provide an analysis of the expected impact on our hourly clean position, which is consistent with the board approved PPA selection standard. All right, next slide. All right, this is the last slide. We've so far discussed really good progress we've made thus far in meeting the board's directed goals. We've looked at some of the challenges that we face achieving those goals, and then we've gone over some plans for future reporting to the board on our progress. And thank you. That is my presentation, and I think we have time for questions.
Great. Thank you, Zach. I see the progress. I see the challenges. Have we got questions here from the board? Let's start with Director Showalter and then Vice Chair Klein.
Yeah, I'm looking at the histogram slide. You have SVCE is on track to meet SB 100 and agency goals for clean and RPS in the near future. It looks really, really good for the next 3 years, and then it jumps down. And I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about that change and how certain it is and how hard it will be to fix.
Yeah, thank you, Director Showalter. Very good question. Yes, we in the with long-term projects, right? There's a lot of lead time to when those will be coming online, and so we have some, those are out ahead of us. And then in the meantime, we are looking at the short-term markets to where can we pick up some supply from primarily existing resources. And we're looking out, say, in the next 1 to 2 years is really can be the sweet spot. A lot of the clean supply that we do contract for in short-term markets is from large hydroelectric, which is very weather and supply dependent. And so the sellers of those resources, they're not always looking out much farther than the next 1 to 2 years, as there's a lot of uncertainty on their end and risk if they commit to providing something that may not show up. But otherwise, we are at this time pretty confident that in that 2028 to 2029, 2030 range, we'll be able to pick up the supply necessary to get to 100%.
So basically, are you saying that the gap you see in these charts is similar to the amount of large hydro we've been able to get in the past?
It is a mix of, yes, large hydro, and more we're actually seeing potential short-term contracts for renewable resources, existing renewable resources that are maybe a little older but operating as a merchant, and they're contracting for 1 to 2 years at a time.
Yeah, because large hydro, they don't have a bigger, a longer runway for that information than that. They just don't know because it depends on the rain.
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you, Zach, for the presentation. I did have a question. So part of this is we have from a renewable portfolio standard, we allow from a carbon-free targets, we allow a 10% margin of error in the event that the targets can't be met. If that exceeds 10%, then you're going to bring it back to the board to get additional direction and figuring out what goes forward from there. How far is that window that we're really looking at? Is it the 12 to 18 months? Is it the July, August update? Is it like next month and all of a sudden that we realize that we don't have enough hydropower that we were expecting? What is that window that it would take for it to come back to the board where we see that we're not going to be hitting that 10% margin?
Yeah. Thank you, Director Klein. Good question. I think it's, as you alluded to, I think it's those two horizons. That first look at, say, 12 to 18 months out, really at that point, if we have new projects that are new long-term projects that are being constructed, built, we should know in that horizon if they're going to meet the dates that they're promising. So that's the first pass of it, is say we should have a sense then, okay, what's going to be in, what's going to be out. And then that second look is once we're about midway through the year, the actual year, we'll have another good sense on, are we on target? Are we not? Do we need to go out and make any short-term procurement decisions? And I mentioned that what we experienced last year in 2024, it did present itself, I think, well ahead of time, that it was going to be very difficult to meet our goals. And that's why we had a lot of discussions well ahead of what happened. And it'd be our expectation that if the dynamics were to be like that again, we would be having, these conversations on the 10% contingency, ahead of time.
Okay, I appreciate that, and just trying to get a better idea on how quickly we need to react, as well as just from an education of the board. Sometimes like this margin of error, and maybe I don't know if we list that. Maybe that should be a 90% or something. It should be kind of an update or part of the CEO update, conceivably, of here's how close we're getting to that 10%, and understanding that at some point it becomes an item for a future meeting. But thank you for the information.
Great. Well, I have a couple of questions, and actually I've been puzzling over something I heard at a wind energy event just yesterday, and it all has to do with capacity. And in effect, the message that I heard, and I don't know if these numbers are right, is that the difference for the California grid requiring 44 gigawatts and 52 gigawatts is only during 70 hours during the year. So we have to design all these things for that peak capacity for reliability, so now my wheels are turning to say, well, how else can we deal with this? So going back to your earlier slide, it sounds, and I tell you, this is what I hear from people. How come we're not encouraging more rooftop solar? We need more rooftop solar. And I tell them, solar has its limits. We had 1,000 hours of curtailment in Southern California. I learned these statistics in Southern California last year. At times we have too much. And how do we balance all of that? And so I'm wondering, Zach, do we have too much solar in our portfolio, or do we have not enough storage? And by the way, that's the easiest question.
Yes, Director Tyson, I can answer that. I can attempt to answer it. I think that what we are seeing for sure is that building or contracting for just, say, standalone solar on its own is not going to be the most optimal for adding value to the portfolio. So definitely, if we're looking at solar, it should have storage attached to it. That energy shifting is very important. And I think more and more we are seeing that batteries are having a significant impact on meeting that peak in those that few set of hours throughout the year.
Okay, and these are mostly sort of ruminating questions. So, and my next one is kind of similar, and that is, are our batteries all in the right place? When you talk about interconnection and you talk about distribution, if we had more of a network of batteries at different locations, wouldn't that also allow shuttling of power to different places at different times where we don't have those constraints?
Another good question. And I think that's really the job of when we are looking at projects to potentially contract for, we do an evaluation of the location, and we have simulated models we look at to say we think this is what the value of the energy in that location is going to be. How is it going to impact, say, alleviating grid congestion? And then it's also to some degree on California ISO's responsibilities when they look at adding new resources. Where is there, if you add too much, is it going to create an issue versus, say, somewhere else?
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. This is my third and final question. And so I hope it's a good one. At lunch today, at a Rotary meeting, we had a speaker about clean energy, and we got our typical question from the audience, and that is, what is artificial intelligence going to do to our grid and throw everything off? And fortunately, in the audience was our very own CEO, who got called unexpectedly to help answer that question. And so I thought this is actually almost looks like planning on my part, but. So I worry about the same thing about artificial intelligence, and I don't understand when the load needs to come. And so here I'm thinking now, if we were to think instead of regionally, if we were to think globally, if we had an artificial intelligence demand during a given time of the day, couldn't solar in California be powering China's AI demand at that same time? And I'm just wondering, is this a crazy thought to say, let's look at it from a global perspective and figure out when is that power needed and how else can we provide it there? That's my last one, though.
Yeah, I'm happy to give that a try. Yeah, I would say, yeah, the big challenge of California solar connecting to Chinese data centers is gonna be probably tough to meet that demand. I think we're baby steps on that process with regionalization. I think that's the first big step, right? That California is now opening itself up to a broader footprint. Say, what are the needs in Wyoming? Is there extra solar we have here we can send there? Is there extra wind there they can send here? So it is definitely, I think Director Tyson going in that direction. You're thinking that the broader the footprint you have to potentially balance out the system, ensure reliability, the more optimal an outcome you're going to have.
All right, that was a good stab at that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to suggest perhaps that because this is a topic that we care about a lot in staff, and we've been thinking about this and we've been working with the state and the other CCAs to really understand how to plan and procure and minimize the risk of stranding assets that is buying more resources than we actually need and then not having a load to absorb those resources. My suggestion is perhaps that maybe if you agree, we can agendize an item where we talk about some of our limits on data centers. So we're doing ourselves as much as we can share, right? Because we can't share specifics, obviously, but we can talk in general what we understand about load and how that load will materialize and what the characteristics of that load look like and all of that good stuff.
I think we'd be interested in that. Sure, that'd be great.
That's it too.
All right. With that, did we have any questions from directors online? I should have checked earlier. No hands raised. And then any public comment? Not seeing any. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for that presentation. And now we'll move on. That was for information. And so we're going to move on to, we're back to Benna Chang. And we're going to hear about the state legislative update. And by the way, before you start, we had a question yesterday about the effect of tariffs, and nobody knew what the answer was going to be. So I'm not going to ask you that.
That is great. That's what about an update. Time for questions is over. So those are the hard questions, Chair. So thank you for not asking me. All right. So tonight, also giving you a state legislative update. So you might have seen that the legislature passed and the governor signed a significant package of energy and climate bills at the very end of the legislative session. It's very dramatic. They actually had to extend the session by a day to get all these bills passed. SVCE supported all four of the bills that we're about to talk about tonight. And we wanted to give you an update on the final language in these bills and the potential impact to SVCE and our customers. I also mentioned that the governor has until next Monday to finish signing or vetoing bills. So we're still waiting for the governor to take final action on some pieces of legislation. And we'll be back to the board at a future meeting with a more comprehensive list and status update. So first bill that we wanted to talk about tonight, Zach very kindly teed up in his presentation, and this is the regionalization bill. You might remember this bill under a different number, SB 540 by Senator Becker. At the end of the session, as part of the larger negotiations on the energy package, the language in SB 540 got put into a new vehicle, and that vehicle was passed and signed as AB 825. As Zach mentioned, it really allows for California to participate in the creation of a West-wide governing body to oversee regional energy markets. And Zach mentioned a lot of the benefits. So we're very excited about this effort to have a broader footprint. And as Zach mentioned, really to optimize our portfolio. You might remember that this bill had kind of a bumpy ride through the legislative process. And I'm happy to report that the final language in AB 825 takes out a lot of the really concerning aspects of previous versions of SB 540 that had been causing some consternation amongst our Western partners. And what was finally passed is a workable version of the bill. So we wanted to give a lot of kudos to CalCCA staff in particular, who are really front and center in crafting the legislative language and advocating for the bill. And I wanted to also thank a lot of you as our board members for helping with the advocacy throughout the year and reaching out to legislators at critical points for this bill. We're really thrilled that Senator Becker was able to get this bill across the finish line. The other major bill that the legislature passed and the governor signed was SB 254 by Senator Becker. This is an energy omnibus bill. There's a lot of components in it since it's an omnibus bill, but we wanted to provide some information on the highlights for you. You might remember we did a board study session at SVCE last year that took a deep dive into the cost drivers on bills as we talked about overall bill affordability and what can be done to lower bills. As part of that discussion, you might remember that we spent some time talking about how wildfire mitigation costs in particular and increased transmission and distribution costs were some of the major drivers on utility bills. And many components of SB 254 attempt to address those issues. So some of the things that the bill does, it replenishes the wildfire insurance fund. This is an insurance fund that is a backstop when the insurance claims are too high on wildfires that are caused by IOU infrastructure. It does not allow the IOUs to rate base $6 billion in wildfire costs, so that's a significant savings for ratepayers. It also includes additional oversight on wildfire mitigation spending. So again, trying to rein in and control the costs that are a key driver on bills today. The bill also has a new structure at the state level for public transmission financing. So the idea is that if the state can help finance some of these transmission projects, you can lower the cost of borrowing and then lower the cost of those projects as well. There is some CEQA streamlining that was passed as part of this package. And then importantly for SVCE, there is some language around energization. We know that delays in energization and connecting customers to the grid is a major problem in our service territory and throughout much of the state. There is increased oversight for this process in the bill, including audits on timelines and penalties for IOUs who don't meet standardized minimum timelines. I also just mentioned here that SVCE and CalCCA were also really pleased that the demand side task force that was proposed in the Assembly's version of the Energy Omnibus Bill did not make it into SB 254. We were concerned that that proposal would have had increased state oversight into CCA funded programs. So we're really happy that the final package did not contain this idea. As in terms of the impact on SVC and our customers from this bill, we anticipate that there will be some upward rate pressure from the $9 billion to replenish the wildfire insurance fund. That is a cost that is charged to ratepayers, but it won't be something that will have an immediate impact. This is a non-bypassable charge that customers are currently already paying. And instead of sunsetting in 2036, SB 254 extends that by another few years. So it's sort of a delayed impact on customers. And then we are anticipating some downward rate pressure from the other elements of the bill. after the governor signed SB 254, he also issued an executive order to implement one piece of the bill. And this piece really focuses on a report that the bill required to be submitted to the legislature and the governor. I wanted to mention this to you all today because I know wildfire mitigation and risk is a very big deal for a lot of our member agencies. And this report really talks about both wildfire mitigation and insurance issues. So state agencies are required now to report alternative risk socialization kind of structures, alternative insurance proposals. For example, how do you count hardening measures in calculating people's insurance rates? Should there be any changes to the limits on public entity claims, for example? The state agencies are also required to look into new wildfire mitigation technologies and solutions. And then a proposal for additional wildfire risk reduction programs. So this could include additional funding for state and local event response, additional funding for home fire risk reduction, vegetation management, and then also community-wide wildfire hardening efforts. There will be some assessments for infrastructure and emergency response, so to determine whether or not those are necessary, and then some suggestions around improved land use planning for local governments for this issue. Finally, one of the major pieces of legislation the legislature passed really was to extend what was formerly known as cap and trade, but now rebranded as cap and invest. And this came as a two-parter. So there was AB 1207 that really reauthorizes the cap and trade program, and then SB 840. So AB 1207, I would characterize it as a fairly clean extension of the cap and trade program. So it extends the program from sunsetting in a couple of years to 2045 instead. It renames the program from cap and trade to cap and invest. Importantly for us, there is language in the bill as well that would change how the CPUC distributes the electricity climate credits. So right now they're done on a twice a year basis. The bill says that the CPUC could look at extending that to 4 times a year on the highest bill months of the year as well. So it's not necessarily summer, because in some jurisdictions there's winter peaking, and winter is actually when you have the highest bills. And then importantly for SVCE, there's also language in the bill that directs the CEC to look at transitioning the gas climate credit to electricity climate credit, really to align the climate credit with the state's goals around decarbonization. So we're very excited to see that piece pass as well. We think in general, this is a good thing because it provides market certainty for the program. And then, as I mentioned, some of the changes to the climate credits are very exciting. And the second part of the package was SB 840 by Senator Lee, which really talks about cap and trade program allocations. So what to do with the revenue generated in the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. The bill changes the structure so that there are different tiers of funding, and it's a waterfall. So you fund tier 1 first, then tier 2, and then tier 3 if there's any leftover funding. So in tier 1, things like CAL FIRE, there's a state backfill for a sales tax exemption for manufacturing. There's a new Legislative Council Climate Bureau that would provide research and analysis for the legislature about climate programs and how effective they are. Those things will all be funded under tier 1. Tier 2 is split between $1 billion for high-speed rail. So this is a shift from a percentage allocation to a hard dollar figure for high-speed rail. And then another $1 billion for a legislative discretionary fund. So every year the legislature would be able to determine how best to use that money. And then finally, tier 3 are a lot of the programs in the ongoing allocation bucket. So that includes funding for the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, AB 617 Air District projects, low carbon transit operations, et cetera. So just wanted to highlight this. I know that many of our member agencies have applied and been successful at getting some of the funding from various categories. in tier 3. So wanted to mention, make sure that you're aware of that. And then we think there is a potential for future funding for SVCE priorities related to electrifying transportation and housing, especially within that legislative discretionary fund. So with that, very happy to answer any questions.
Director Showalter.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about the CEQA exemptions that are included? We're hearing a lot about CEQA exemptions this year, and so what are the ones that are included in the omnibus bill?
It came in 2 flavors. So one part of it was about grouping types of renewable projects together to do a program level EIR. So the idea that you would do approval of a certain group of projects all at once, so that when individual projects come through, they have a streamlined CEQA path. So that's on the renewable side. And then there was also some CEQA streamlining for undergrounding projects at the distribution level. So the idea is to speed up the IOU undergrounding process and hopefully save some time and money. Yeah.
Vice Chair.
Yes, a lot of this year has been talked about wildfires and the response as far as that's concerned. Has there been any move, and I've seen this in a few cities, Central Valley and all that, and some in the mountain areas, on very restrictive, very prescriptive setback designs, and ultimately, like, and I haven't went through the details of all these bills, but currently I don't think that they're, from a state level, they're not making recommendations for, I'll say, general fire prevention as far as trees and setbacks and all that. It kind of ties to CEQA in some way, but it's CEQA is trying to speed up the construction. Here we're trying to basically say, well, if you're doing new construction, the setbacks, the trees, the foliage, all this is part of that. Is there any movement that you've seen from that standpoint?
The closest I can think about is that executive order that the governor issued. There was that line item about land use planning, and I wonder if that will be an opportunity for the state to make some suggestions on setback rules, et cetera. But I haven't heard more, and I haven't seen that level of specificity in the bills that I've talked about today.
Okay. And then as far as the tier 2 $1 billion legislative discretionary fund, is that will be approved as part of the budget each year? Will that be a budget trailer that doesn't get approved till August or September? How is that envisioned from legislation?
Sure. Normally it's approved as part of the budget. So the legislature already has a discretionary fund that they choose to allocate every year. So I anticipate the process will be relatively the same. So the governor makes a proposal in January, they have legislative conversations and budget committee hearings about it, and then they come to an agreement in June on how to spend that funding.
Okay. But will this one be like a special earmarked fund that each year, this is how we're going to spend this, for it's, you see some of this is completely earmarked, but depending upon the issue of the day. And so it makes it very difficult for like long-term programs if the legislators are readjusting this on a yearly basis.
Yes, absolutely true.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Anything online? Do we have any comments from the public? I don't see any in the room or online. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We will now move on to item number 5, which is the local agency planning, and this is also for information.
Good evening. Okay. Right computer mic is on. So I am here for the bi-monthly update on local agency action planning. We're going to talk, most of my update will be on REACH codes right now, although REACH codes are really just one portion of the work that we do with member agencies on pollution-free buildings, but we are in the heat of REACH code season. I think my math is correct, we have 4 agencies that are bringing votes to council in the next 2 weeks. So that's where my focus is going to be. And as I was thinking about this month's update, because I was thinking of a different theme each month, I think the theme here really is the uniqueness of this time. So 2025 is a unique year for REACH codes. And because of that, we have developed 13 individualized, unique plans. And we were able to do that really because of some unique relationships that we have with each of your cities. So it's going to kind of give an overview of that process, sort of why 2025 is different, how each of these plans are unique, and then really why all of this is successful is because of relationships between staff. So first, just starting with a kind of a reminder again, I know we've been talking about this several times, but it really was only a few months ago that AB 130 was passed by the state, which limits and changes the ability of local jurisdictions to adopt REACH codes and of the building code cycle overall. So all of your staff have been working for several months to update the code on cycle as it is done every 3 years. There'll be a pause now in the residential code for the next 6 years. These pauses really, the focus is on residential, so there still will be the ability to make changes to commercial REACH codes going forward. So because of these changes, we've been working with each jurisdiction to kind of evaluate within the carve-outs, for lack of a better word, of the rule, what makes the most sense for your jurisdiction. We have a special counsel on board as well as a bunch of technical consultants on board to help us navigate all of this. But I also want to kind of keep in mind this is a new process. The rules were just passed. So we also, our technical consultants meet on a really regular basis with the Energy Commission to give them a heads up of what is happening. We stay in as much contact as we can with the Building Standards Commission so that we can try to foresee any hiccups or changes in the process this year. And we think that everything is on track, but also just noting this is a different process this year. As a piece of that, too, I want to say a real deep thank you to everybody's staff that have been working kind of alongside our team this year. Every time that we work with all of the member jurisdictions, kind of what is, I think, key to our success so far has been knowing and understanding the uniqueness of each one of our member agencies. And so up here, I think we have like 4 colors that are color coding different actions. But I think really all of these are 13 different actions. Every single member agency is unique in their timing, unique in their process, unique in their exact set of goals and resources. And so we feel very lucky to get to work with the great staff that you all have to kind of create tailored action plans for each of your jurisdictions. But this is just a high level showing of kind of the things that are coming up in the next couple of weeks so that everyone is aware. I will also say that this is an evolving conversation. So there's even some of these on here who have, as of our last conversation, were not thinking that they were going to move forward this year. But some of those conversations are still happening and still evolving. So I think we made some changes to the slides actually an hour or so before the board meeting. And I imagine that that will kind of continue to happen. And then I also want to say after REACH codes, we're continuing to work on permitting processes and other training and things to kind of, this is just one portion of all of the work that we do. And then this last piece, this is the set of resources that we have available to you all and to your staff. This is very much a partnership. But the point here that I want to make is the uniqueness of relationships. When we set aside the goals and thought ahead at the start of this year of thinking about reach codes, we thought we might have 3 to 5 jurisdictions that would be thinking about a two-way AC heat pump. When AB 130 was passed, we weren't sure how many jurisdictions, if anyone, was going to decide to move forward this year. It's difficult to pivot midstream with just really a couple of months for local governments. But because we really have such deep relationships with your building officials, with your sustainability and environmental staff, with your city managers, we were able to work closely with them. I don't know if everybody knows this, but we meet on a monthly basis through our member agency working group. Monica meets regularly with city managers. We have kind of regular email communications. And because all that was in place, we were able to kind of move pretty quickly to where we are now. And this is the list of kind of continued things that you all might want to tap into and your staff will be tapping into over the next couple of weeks. And again, number 3 being particularly important this year as we navigate whatever newness these rules bring to us. And again, 2025 is different, but I think I just want to kind of close this before answering any questions that you all have by really saying a deep thank you and really extending particularly a thank you to your building staff, your planning staff, your sustainability staff who've just been really excellent partners. We think of ourselves at SVCE as like an extension of your cities as an energy department. We're here to help you meet the goals and just the commitment and work ethic that everybody has put in the last several weeks to get those council packets to your desks has been really inspiring. So thank you, and thank you to your staff.
Before we go to questions, I have one other thing to add to Zoe's presentation. If you weren't aware, Silicon Valley Clean Energy along with Tesla Clean Energy received a very prestigious award from at Climate Week in last week or 2 weeks ago. It was the Electric Innovation Award for in code efforts actually. And so Zoe is a big part of that. Obviously, your staff is a big part of that too. And a lot of people at SVCE over the years have some on reach codes or worked with your staff or with this board on getting those reach codes adopted. I unfortunately don't have a picture to share or to share with you since it was all get an actual physical award. But Chair Tyson was able to join us to receive that award as well. And so thank you again to you and your staff for that effort and to our staff too.
Let me throw in there that when I saw what the other awards were given to other organizations, in almost every case, I thought, we're doing that at least as well as they are. But I don't think it would look good to give all the awards to us, even if we deserved it.
Any questions?
Right. Do we have any questions? Yes. Alternate Director Abe Kogan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm now sitting in a different seat and I'm looking at my jurisdiction. So I realize this is 2025. So the building codes is due this year, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we haven't, I'm not sure if we've even started on these items, but can we look to 28 then to implement these measures? What would you recommend?
Yep. So we can definitely talk to but about any unique jurisdictions, but the codes technically could be adopted. Most people do. This is all for what's happening by December.
Okay.
And so amendments to the codes could be adopted later, retroactively. But usually folks do any reach codes alongside the building code adoption, which needs to happen before January 1st.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll follow up
Yeah.
offline. Thanks.
Yep.
Director Nevis.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking without full information because I won't actually get our council packet until tomorrow night. But I feel like perhaps from the hints I've gotten from preliminary agendas and stuff, there might be a disconnect
Mm.
in between how my jurisdiction is framing what we're talking about and what what I heard tonight and what I heard in an email offering further support from two other people at SVCE in advance of the meeting. And what that is not necessarily different in substance, but the phraseology reach codes has so many connotations, not all of them positive. We're adopting or considering adopting building codes with climate technologies and mitigations. Again, I haven't seen the packet. That may not be the words that are being used. But I think that that difference in describing it could be important. And have you heard that in the discussions? And how accurate is what my perception is that I just shared with you versus what you think is going on? Because I feel like reach codes is an outdated terminology.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment that it's an outdated. It says green. Yep. I think
Just a little far away.
sorry, I was a little too far away. Yeah, I think that's a great assessment that it's probably outdated. I haven't heard the exact terminology that you just used, but this does speak to the uniqueness of each jurisdiction, and communicating effectively to that jurisdiction, the constituents, I think is so important, and using words that resonate with what we're trying to do. We've also heard code enhancements in the past. We've heard locally tailored ordinances. So I think it really depends on the drive behind the ordinance by council, which from what I'm hearing you talk about is climate technology.
I admit, those words I used were my words. I don't know they're consistent with the packet. But if the message you're delivering here broadly is not consistent, I just am uncomfortable if other jurisdictions are using other terminologies, then let's kind of maybe flesh that out to make it more constructive.
Okay.
Because when I got that email today, I was like, but that's not how we're describing it, so it's like the bus, a different bus left the station than we're on, maybe. Sorry, bad analogy, but thank you.
Yeah.
Great. I do believe we have Director Walia has a question or hand raised.
Thank you, Chair Tyson. So I want to follow up on the remarks made by Director Meadows just now. I have also not yet seen the staff report in the city of Saratoga. It hasn't come out yet, but I believe next week's council meeting, a week from today in Saratoga, is going to be talking about the building codes. And I want to thank SVCE staff for giving some information ahead of time so that I, as the SVCE board member, am able to bring those discussion points under the umbrella of the building code in my city. Having said that, so thanks to SVCE staff, and at the same time, I don't know the specifics because I have not seen the staff report, precisely what Sally, Director Meadows just said. I do agree with the point she made that different cities, or rather I would put it, different council members in different cities have a different perception of the value or lack thereof of the different reach codes. So I'm just thinking about her remarks, and I'm in agreement with what I'm hearing from her. So if we can get a little more fine-tuned support from SVCE staff, you have all been fabulous. Believe me, you have all been fabulous. But maybe tweaking this so that it aligns more with the way each city is handling this, i.e., basically the building code. So those are some of my thoughts. And if Zoe, you want to respond to that, if there's anything you want to add, I'd appreciate that. If not, just take it as more a comment as our question. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I can describe what the process looks like. So we work with our technical consultants to develop model code language. And we then meet with staff from each city and talk through that model code language. And then each city staff takes that work and tailors it to their jurisdiction's needs. That often involves tweaking language or descriptions to meet the needs of their constituents, or again, the drives of their council. They often, though not always, then bring back the staff report and the updated ordinance for our technical consultants and staff to do another review, particularly this year, to see if we catch anything that's out of alignment with AB 30. We do try very carefully to not over prescribe too much language. That thinks it's very good advice because we appreciate consistency as well. But we also think it's really important that this work is ultimately the work of cities. So we're here to help build capacity, not to dictate goals or even really process. And so we are always walking that fine line. But that's generally what that process looks like.
All right, very good.
Thank you. And that is deeply appreciated. Suggest that SVCE is being prescriptive to, at least to my city. I know that is not the case. You have been extremely supportive, and this is very helpful. Thank you. Those are my thoughts. Thank you, Chair Tyson.
Oh, sure. Director Meadows.
Yeah, and I just want to say, no prescription going on, none of that. I just think the branding.
Yeah.
If the branding is misaligned, then it opens up room for misunderstanding, maybe by, the public or something. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. The process with staff has gone really well as far as I know.
Yep.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. And most of your efforts are directed at the planning staff. And I have to say that I was walking past our Public Works Director's office, and he called out to me and said, that SVCE staff, they've been so helpful to me in my public works electrification efforts. And so I thought that relationship building you're talking about, it's broader, and it gets a reputation that works through the whole organization. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, I'm going to ask if there's any public comment. I do not see any in the room. I do not see any online. And so thank you very much for that report. With that, we're going to move on to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Do we have anything to suggest or report? I do not see any in the room. I will just give a brief report that Vice Chair Klein and I were able, what a wonderful opportunity to visit this SunZia pattern wind project in New Mexico. Massive scale, huge project, incredible efforts. There was one presentation on why long distance high voltage DC is better than high voltage AC. And Director Klein will brief anybody who wants to know about that later. And so it's just really a wonderful event, and it's just remarkable to see what's happening. And it's not just the fact that they're building these massive wind farms, but that they're also locating their equipment in Colorado and other places. So it's domestic manufacturing and of an incredible scale, and they seem to be a very fine partner to work with. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I totally agree with what you said. I was very impressed with the team, and from a partner standpoint, they appreciated the California CCAs that helped partner with them to make sure that this project is a reality, and will soon be online. But ultimately, it was great to meet that team. But some of the questions that I had at our board meeting earlier this year, I was finally exactly what Chair Tyson was saying, the high voltage DC lines and all of that from my computer science, electrical engineering days. I had a lot of questions, and being able to, talk face to face with the experts was really great. And yes, I do have lots of good slides to to pass on if you're interested in what that actually means. But just to see what they've already accomplished and looking at where they'll be a year from now, it's truly impressive just from a scale of what they've been able to do is, great for this organization and great for, in my opinion, California and the nation. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other announcements? I do not see any. In that case, we're going to move on to public comment. We have a closed session coming up. You can see the two topics. We have public employee performance evaluation and conference with labor negotiators. Do we have any public comment on the closed session topics? I do not see any in the room. I do not see any hands raised. So with that, we will now adjourn to closed session. Thank you. No, it's all of them. Okay. All right, great. We're back. I think we want to start the recording. Oh, we're good? Okay. Thank you. We returned from closed session and we have a report from closed session, and that is the board has appointed Vice Chair Klein and Chair me to be labor negotiators. And there's nothing to report on the public employee performance evaluation. Thank you. With that, we are now adjourned, and we'll see you next month.